Fire Eyes Media.
Monday, April 18th, 2016 started like any other day for fitness instructor Missy Bevers. She arrived at the Creekside Church of Christ around 4:15 a.m. to set up for her 5 a.m. Camp Gladiator class, a routine she had done countless times before. But when her students arrived, they didn't find their instructor waiting to push them through an early morning workout. Instead, they walked into a scene of horror. Missy Bevers had been brutally murdered. Who would want to kill a beloved mother, wife, and fitness coach? And why?
Before we dive into today's case, we need to ask you a quick favor. Can you take a moment to rate us 5 stars and leave a review? It helps us grow, share more stories, and advocate for more families. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok for show-related content, the best memes, and a peek behind the scenes. If you want ad-free episodes, consider subscribing on Patreon or Apple Podcasts for just $3 a month. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get into today's case. I'm Gina.
And I'm Amber.
And this is the weird true crime of Missy Bevers.
Missy Bevers, a 45-year-old fitness trainer in Midlothian, Texas, which is about 25 miles southwest of Dallas, was brutally murdered inside Creekside Church of Christ in the early hours of April 18, 2016. When her Camp Gladiator campers arrived for their 5 a.m. workout, they didn't find their instructor ready to push them through another early morning session. Instead, they found her lying in the hallway, unresponsive, surrounded by a pool of blood, shattered glass, tools, and a large hammer. Surveillance footage from inside the church captured a figure roaming the halls before the attack, dressed in SWAT-style tactical gear with the word police emblazoned on the vest. But despite this chilling footage, Missy's killer has never been identified. So what happened that morning?
At 4:16 a.m., Missy arrived at the church. It had been raining, so she decided to hold class inside instead of in the parking lot. Surveillance cameras captured her parking under the south entrance awning and unloading her equipment. Just 44 minutes later, at 5 a.m., her campers arrived, only to make a gruesome discovery. As they walked toward the southwest corner of the building, they found Missy motionless in the hallway. When first responders arrived at 5:10 a.m., it was clear that this wasn't just a freak accident or a medical emergency. Missy had been brutally attacked. There was blood, shattered glass, and scattered tools near her body. Sadly, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Brandon, her husband of almost 18 years, was contacted and given the devastating news.
Remember the church security footage that captured a person dressed head to toe in tactical police gear? Let's talk more about what the footage showed, because it is absolutely haunting. Besides the tactical gear, the intimidating figure was wearing a heavy black BDU-style pants, picture like cargo army-style pants, gloves, a helmet, and a vest with police plastered across the front. As mentioned earlier, this person was first spotted on camera at 3:50 a.m., about 25 minutes before Missy arrived. They didn't seem rushed. They weren't frantically searching for valuables. They were casually strolling from room to room, smashing windows and prying open doors with what looked like a hammer or similar tool. Police couldn't tell if they were armed with weapons other than the hammer and an object they were using to open doors. At one point, they even spent several minutes in the church kitchen, just poking around. It was eerie, almost methodical.
Missy pulled into the parking lot, completely unaware that someone was already inside. After parking at the south entrance, she started bringing in her workout gear, just like she always did. And then, at 4:20 a.m., she walked straight into the church. She can be seen on camera walking down a hallway straight toward her likely killer. Unfortunately, this is where the footage cuts off. You see, the church's security system worked on motion sensors, which means the cameras only turned on when movement was detected. So after Missy walked past the camera's field of view, it shut off. And the attack itself, it was never caught on camera. According to Missy's autopsy report, she had multiple puncture wounds on her head and neck, consistent with the tools the suspect was seen carrying in the security footage.
At first, they assumed the suspect was a man. The heavy gear, the broad stance, it just seemed likely. But then they took a closer look. The gait, the way the suspect walked, was off. Their feet pointed outward, almost duck-footed, with the right foot turning outward more than the left. It was an unusual way of walking, something that stood out. It was so unique, in fact, that forensic podiatrists were brought in to analyze the suspect's movements. And that's when things got interesting. Experts couldn't determine if this person was actually male or female. The way they walked, their posture, it wasn't distinctly masculine or feminine, which meant the gender of Missy's killer, still unknown.
That point is so interesting to me because you hear about this case and you see the footage, and I feel like a normal individual just immediately goes, oh yeah, that's totally a male.
That's a dude.
Yeah, because you don't think about a woman doing something like that. It doesn't mean it wasn't.
But they certainly can. We know that for a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been proven wrong multiple times. But it's still, like, even knowing the facts of this case, it's still hard to picture it as anybody else but a male.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, to me. At 3:30 p.m. that same day, the Midlothian Police Department held its first press conference about Missy's murder, and the community was in shock. Who would brutally kill a well-loved fitness instructor inside a church, of all places? They released a 7-second clip from the surveillance footage showing the suspect casually roaming the halls in tactical gear. Police informed the public that the suspect was already inside the church before Missy arrived. Right away, this raised huge questions. The biggest being, what was the motive?
There were several working theories. Maybe Missy interrupted a burglary in progress. But 4 a.m. is a weird time to rob a church, so she could have been targeted. Of course, there's also the possibility that it was an elaborate, random situation. Basically, everything was on the table and nothing had been ruled out. During the initial investigation, police found signs of forced entry, indicating a possible burglary. Double doors on the northeast side of the church had been broken, but there was no evidence that anyone had gone through the doors. There was also another metal door with a broken window on the north side. Officers believe the suspect entered through this door by reaching through the broken glass and unlocking the door from the inside. But what was even more bizarre, nothing seemed to be stolen.
Missy's gray Ford F-150 was still parked outside under the awning. The front passenger door and the truck bed cover and tailgate were wide open. Her workout equipment was scattered near the entrance, and her wallet was on the front seat. Her iPhone sat untouched on the dashboard. Even her gun, which she carried for safety, was left behind. A warrant was obtained to go through Missy's phone and iPad, and we'll get into what was found later. But perhaps one of the biggest missed opportunities in this case, the church's exterior security cameras weren't working.
Of course they weren't.
No, of course not. Like, Why does this keep happening? Just, conveniently not working. And they had actually been malfunctioning for quite some time before the murder, meaning there was no footage of anyone approaching the building. No video of Missy's arrival, no possible suspect vehicle, nothing that could have captured those crucial moments before and after the attack. And if those cameras had been working, they might have held the key to identifying Missy's killer. And something that just popped into my head, I wonder if this person knew that the cameras on the outside of the building weren't working.
If they didn't, they got
very lucky.
Quote, quote, lucky.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, it definitely seemed very methodical and like they knew what they were doing and had a plan that didn't necessarily go their way. Or maybe it did. Who knows? But yeah.
So many questions.
Yes.
Well, we all know that when a woman is murdered, police and the public almost always zero in on one person first, the husband. Missy and her husband, Brandon Bevers, had been married since June 1998. The day before her murder, Brandon flew to Biloxi, Mississippi for a long-planned fishing trip, leaving Missy at home with their 3 daughters. It wasn't hard for investigators to confirm his alibi. He was 9 hours away at the time of the crime. But that didn't stop armchair detectives from relentlessly targeting him online. Some even went as far as to harass the Bevers' oldest daughter, who was just 15 years old. That's not okay.
It's not. I understand that people get very emotionally tied to these things, especially if maybe you live around the area or familiar with the situation for one reason or another, but targeting a child is
minor.
Never okay.
Never okay.
Never okay. This kid had nothing to do with what happened to her mother, and she's just trying to process, leave the poor kids alone.
Exactly. She just lost her mother.
Exactly. It's disgusting.
Make better choices.
Right.
Don't
make the situation worse, because that's all you're doing.
That's a more appropriate thing to say than what was going to come out of my mouth that I stopped myself from saying. So.
Your feelings were also valid.
When speculation around Brandon failed to hold weight, internet sleuths turned their attention to his father, Randy Bevers. Even though police confirmed that Randy was in California with his wife at the time of Missy's murder, that didn't stop the rumors. The speculation exploded in late April 2016 when a search warrant surfaced, revealing that just 4 days after the crime, Randy had dropped off a blood-stained shirt at a local dry cleaner, because murder is obviously the only reason someone can have blood on their shirt.
It's very unfortunate timing, but that does not mean that he had anything to do with it. And according to the warrant, an employee called police after Randy left the dry cleaner, saying the shirt had visible bloodstains and that it looked like someone had tried to clean it before dropping it off. When police seized the shirt and sent it for testing, the results came back. The blood was from a dog. Hoping to put the rumors to rest, Randy and Brandon spoke to the media. Randy explained that after returning from California, he and his wife stayed with a family member. While they were there, a dog fight broke out and Randy's wife's dog was severely injured. In a desperate attempt to save the animal, Randy rushed it to an emergency vet, but it didn't survive, and the blood on his shirt was from handling the dog.
So, just lost their dog in a tragic accident, and now people are accusing him of murder because he lost his dog and was covered in blood.
And they also just lost their daughter-in-law.
Daughter-in-law.
So they lose their daughter-in-law, then they have this horrible freak accident with their dog. Anybody who has pets understands how heartbreaking a situation like that is. And then he's getting accused of murder.
Now, you'd think that after going through that, the last thing you'd expect is for a dry cleaner to call the cops on you. But instead of being upset, Randy said he was glad the employee made the call. because suspicious activity should always be reported. And absolutely, I applaud him, handled that with grace and more patience than I probably ever could have mustered. So absolutely applaud.
Yeah, I was a much bigger person in that situation than I think most people would have been. Yep. So it says a lot about his character as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So remember the iPhone and iPad found in Missy's truck? Search warrants were obtained for Missy's LinkedIn, as well as several AT&T phone numbers. Well, as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered issues in Missy and Brandon's marriage. Missy had been involved in multiple affairs, and while Brandon admitted to knowing about at least one, he didn't share any details. There were also reports of financial trouble, though Brandon later denied this, saying their finances were fine, but he didn't deny their relationship had been struggling.
Just 3 days before her murder, Missy showed a friend a LinkedIn message she had received from an unknown man. She described it as creepy and strange. The content of the message has never been released. When police searched Missy's LinkedIn account, they found that she had been involved in a romantic relationship with a man Brandon hadn't mentioned. The two had been exchanging messages since January of 2016, and while most of their conversations were deleted, the recovered messages confirmed their intimate relationship and plans to meet at least once. Investigators spoke with the man, and he confirmed the relationship. However, there's no public record of what, if anything, was found on his phone.
Authorities also obtained a warrant for AT&T records, allowing them to search calls, texts, emails, GPS locations, and other data from 7 different individuals, including Missy, Brandon, Randy, and one of Missy's romantic partners. Police suspected the killer may have tracked Missy's schedule through her phone or even recorded the murder. Despite digging into digital records and phone activity, it's unclear if anything significant was found. And if investigators know more, they haven't said. Midlothian PD held another press conference on May 20th, 1 month after Missy's murder. By then, they had received around 1,000 tips, but many were based on speculation, leading to countless hours spent chasing leads that ultimately went nowhere. A detailed forensic analysis of the surveillance footage by the Tarrant County District Attorney's Forensic and Technology Team helped investigators refine what they knew about the suspect. The analysis estimated the suspect's height between 5'2" and 5'7", and suggested they were likely light-skinned, though the effort to conceal their identity made this impossible to confirm.
One of the most distinctive details was the suspect's gait. Their feet turned outward, especially on the right foot. Experts noted that this could have been due to a temporary condition, injury, or another factor, meaning they may not always walk this way. But Dr. Michael Nierenberg, a forensic podiatrist, took a closer look than they originally took. And he had a police officer wear similar tactical gear and tested how it changed their walking pattern. He even tried it himself and found that the bulky armor and carrying a weapon made a noticeable difference. The way the suspect walked in the footage may not be their natural gait. Nierenberg also pointed out that toes pointing outward isn't all that rare. A lot of people actually walk like that naturally. While the suspect's walk stood out on camera, it wasn't necessarily a unique identifier. He also dismissed the idea that gender could be determined from gait alone, calling it impossible.
As for the tactical gear, it wasn't exclusive to law enforcement. Anyone could buy it, and that made it impossible to track down where it was purchased. And honestly, that's unsettling. The fact that someone can walk into a store or order realistic SWAT-style gear online, gear that makes them look like actual law enforcement, raises the question, how do you know who to trust?
You know what it reminded me of? You know the stories of the people that will dress up like police officers and pull people over in their unmarked vehicles? That's what this reminded me of.
And that's why it popped into my head. If you're pulled over and you're suspicious about it, you call into the police department and keep them on the line.
And they want you to.
And they want you to. And they will verify if there's a unit at your location with you. And if not, they'll send someone out to figure out what's going on. Midlothian PD also released a still shot of a silver Nissan Altima that was caught on camera outside of SFWA Outdoors, a tactical shop, about a half-mile down the road from the church. The car was captured outside of the shop a few hours before the murder. Investigators released the picture in the hopes of making contact with the driver, not because they were a suspect, but because they wanted to speak with them. Later, a video of the car slowly circling the parking lot was released. At one point, the headlights were turned off and back on. Maybe as some sort of signal? While investigators didn't seem to think the incidents were related, we will say it's a little strange or coincidental that they were investigating a car found outside of a tactical shop down the street from where a person dressed in full SWAT gear committed a violent murder.
It's a little coincidental. I did look up that store. They don't sell any sort of clothing items similar to that. So this person obviously didn't get whatever. I don't know. It's a weird coincidence to me that this car is circling this outdoor, tactical shop in the middle of the night for no reason. And then a couple hours later, this crime is committed. It's just weird. But
unless they've got a kid in the car they're trying to get to sleep, but...
True. Who knows?
Who knows?
Definitely been there. So let's talk theories. One of the first working theories was that Missy interrupted a burglary in progress. At first glance, it kind of makes sense, right? The suspect forced their way in, broke glass, pried open doors, classic burglary behavior. But here's the problem. What exactly did they steal? Church staff went through everything, and nothing was missing. No cash, no electronics, no valuables, nothing. It's like they were there to break things, not take things.
And then there's the timing. 4 a.m. is a really weird time to rob a church. Most burglars wouldn't pick a time when someone might walk in at any moment. If this was a burglary, it wasn't a very well-planned one, which led police to ask, was this really random? Or was Missy's murder personal? Think about it. If this wasn't about robbery, then what was it about? Missy was the only person harmed. The suspect didn't ransack the church. They didn't attack anyone else, and they didn't seem in any rush to get out. It's almost like they were waiting. If Missy was the intended target, then the next logical question is, who would want her dead? Was it a personal grudge? A crime of passion? Could it have been someone jealous or resentful?
Any three of those things.
Or
could be true.
Yeah. So many questions.
There's so many questions, and that's why police wouldn't commit to any one theory. They said they were keeping all possibilities open, that this could be a targeted attack or it could be some elaborate random act of violence. And then there was another chilling thought. Was this an isolated incident? Midlothian PD made it clear that they believed Missy's murder was an isolated case. But just to be sure, they started looking into other crimes in the area. Specifically, they wanted to know, had there been any reports of someone in police tactical gear committing similar crimes? If this was a pattern, they might be dealing with a serial offender. But as far as we know, they didn't find any cases like this. No one else had reported seeing a fake cop in SWAT gear breaking into buildings, which only deepened the mystery. Because if this wasn't random, if this wasn't part of some larger crime spree, then that meant one thing. Someone planned this. And like we said, they never publicly released a motive. So all options are still on the table here.
They've never confirmed if they believe Missy was targeted. They've never said if they have a prime suspect. And they've never given any indication of what they think happened in those final moments. Brandon, Missy's husband, believes Missy knew her killer. In an interview with People magazine, he said, "I still think whoever this person was knew my wife and had a motive. There's no doubt about it." He also went on to speculate that there's no reason someone would break into a church dressed like that and stage what appears to be a robbery for no reason. If they really were there to commit a robbery, why would they kill Missy and leave the diamond wedding ring on her finger? He's got a point.
Yeah. And which just leaves us with more questions. If it was random, why did this suspect show up in full tactical gear? It's a weird thing to wear. It's a great way to cover your identity, but why? And if it was a burglary, then why didn't they steal anything? Is it because she came in and interrupted them? But they had already been there for, 20 minutes at this point. They had plenty of time to take things. And if Missy was the target, who had a reason to kill her? And perhaps the biggest question of all is, how has this case gone unsolved for so long? Because this person is still out there. Unfortunately, this case has been plagued by a lack of evidence for multiple reasons. There were no fingerprints or DNA left at the scene since the suspect wore gloves and full-body tactical gear, covering their hair, face, and skin. There was little to no chance of anything being left behind.
Which is probably why they wore that.
Absolutely, yeah. They knew what they were doing.
The lack of security footage also made it nearly impossible to track the suspect. The church's exterior cameras weren't working, as we said before, and the interior cameras only recorded when motion was detected. And then there's this. The attack itself happened outside the camera's reach. It's hard to ignore the possibility that the suspect knew exactly where the cameras were and intentionally stayed out of view. And of course, the online speculation didn't help. Despite investigators clearing all names, armchair detectives continued to point fingers at Missy's family and affair partners. We've seen this before. People genuinely want to help solve the case. But when not all the facts are available, theories can pull investigators in the wrong direction, wasting valuable time instead of leading them to the real suspect.
Yeah, actually, a perfect example of this happened in December of 2016, when investigators searched a home in Ennis, Texas, which is about 30 miles from Midlothian. The house belonged to a retired police officer who supposedly had a similar gait to the suspect in the security footage. But after searching the property, investigators found nothing connected to Missy's murder, and the man was cleared after his alibi checked out. And remember, they even said, the experts even said, what they were wearing and holding did impact their gait. So it's, you can't just look at an everyday individual and be like, oh, they walk exactly like this person does. If we know, we all know, wearing different shoes or pants or whatever can impact the way you walk. I walk like a new baby deer in heels. I don't look like my normal self in different shoes. So it's just a stretch to me. It's a stretch. And since then, there's been no significant movement in the case. We've talked a lot about Missy's murder, the investigation, and the frustrating lack of answers. But let's take a step back and talk about who Missy was as a person. Because at the heart of this case isn't just some crime, it's a life that was stolen far too soon.
Missy was born Terry Leanne Strickland on August 9th, 1970 in Graham, Texas. But she spent most of her childhood growing up in Jacksboro with her two brothers, one older, one younger. Even as a kid, she had this magnetic energy. She was the type of person who never met a stranger and made sure everyone felt welcome as long as they knew how to have fun. After graduating from Jacksboro High School in 1988, she attended several colleges before finding her place at Tarleton State University, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree in 1995. She spent several years working in retail before meeting Brandon Bevers, the man she would marry on June 20th, 1998.
Missy's passion for helping others led her back to school to get her teaching certificate in special education. She worked as a teacher for several years before making the decision to stay home when their first daughter was born in 2001. Missy and Brandon went on to have two more daughters, one in 2003 and another in 2007. If there was one thing Missy was known for, it was her deep love for her family. She was the kind of mom who put everything into making sure her daughters felt supported, encouraged, and loved. She believed that dreaming big and believing in yourself could take you anywhere in life. And if there was one thing she didn't lack, it was determination.
That same determination led her to fitness. Over the years, Missy transformed herself, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And once she saw what she was capable of, she wanted to help others do the same. She became a Camp Gladiator instructor, but it was so much more than just a job. She wasn't just there to make people sweat. She wanted them to be stronger in every aspect of their lives. She loved God, her family, her friends, and every single person she came into contact with. She was the type of person people naturally gravitated toward.
At the time of her death, Missy's Facebook profile perfectly summed up her purpose in life. Having an impact on others and helping others reach their fitness and health goals is my passion, in all caps. She often posted updates about her Camp Gladiator classes, sharing schedules, motivation, and encouragement with her clients. Fitness wasn't just something Missy did day to day to make money. It was a way of life for her. It really meant a lot to her. And on the morning of April 18th, 2016, she woke up before the sun, ready to do what she loved most. She had no idea it would be her last workout.
As of today, Missy Bevers' murder remains unsolved, but investigators insist it's not a cold case. In April 2021, to mark the 5-year anniversary, Midlothian PD released an update stating that they still receive new tips and leads almost daily. Over the years, they've followed more than 3,000 tips traveling across Texas and beyond in hopes of finding something that could finally break the case open. They also brought in a retired federal agent whose sole job is to review the case file and search for anything investigators may have missed. Despite these efforts, presenting the case to homicide investigator associations didn't result in any new substantial leads.
One of the most recent updates came in the form of a new height analysis of the suspect. Based on forensic measurements, the vertical distance from the floor to the top of the suspect's headwear was estimated to be around 5'8". Midlothian PD reiterated their interest in anyone who fits this height range and has, or had, a similar outward-turned gait. They acknowledge that the suspect's walk may have been temporary. Like we said, it could have been by an injury, a condition, or even the tactical gear itself. So really, it could have been anyone. And also in April of 2021, the reward for information about Missy's death was raised to $150,000, thanks in part to True Crime Broads, a podcast dedicated to keeping Missy's case in the public eye. The podcast even helped fund a billboard campaign advertising the reward.
Midlothian PD still urges the public to watch the surveillance footage, hoping that someone recognizes the suspect. Investigators still don't know the gender or race, but they believe the suspect is light-skinned, as mentioned before, and that their distinctive gait could be the key to identifying them. There's also the lingering mystery of the silver Nissan Altima seen in the parking lot of the SWFA Outdoors just a few hours before Missy was killed. Police don't believe the driver is a suspect, but they still want to speak with them. Perhaps they saw something that night without even realizing it.
After all these years, police have still never released a motive, nor have they confirmed whether they believe Missy was targeted or if this was a random attack. They have also never publicly named a person of interest, and have still said that Missy's family, friends, and coworkers are all in the clear. So that leaves us with the same questions that have haunted this case since day one. Who was inside that church, and why did they kill Missy Bevers?
You know, in cases like this, you only hope and pray that the police have a little bit more information than what we know, because if this is it, if this is truly all they know, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So hopefully they have something that they are not releasing publicly, which absolutely, please do. That helps keep the integrity of the case, but it's just that lingering thought that this truly could be all they have, and that's devastating.
Yeah.
But if you have any information, you can contact Crime Stoppers of Ellis County at 972-937-7297 or the Midlothian Police Department Criminal Investigation Division at 972-775-7634. And if your tip leads to an arrest and conviction, you may be eligible for the $150,000 reward, not to mention giving the family some much-needed answers and closure.
The most important thing.
So everybody, what do you think? Was Missy's murder a robbery gone wrong or a planned brutal attack? I don't. They're wandering around in that church willy-nilly for 25 minutes before she arrives, and then she's dead. It's not, I personally, truly do not believe that it was just a random. There's so many coincidences. The cameras weren't working. The murder happened just outside of the camera's reach. The tactical gear that they wore, there were several steps taken. Either if it was just a random attack and Missy was in the wrong place at the wrong time, they still had planned everything that they had done down to a T.
That's a really intricate plan just to walk through a church.
Exactly.
For what? So it's almost like they were waiting for her because they spent so much time just wandering around. Okay, I'm just here waiting.
And most people are not up at 4.
No.
I do not recommend waking up at 4:30 every morning. It's not a fun time.
No, it's not.
So, and they had to know that she would be awake and up there.
And I mean, to Brandon's point, even Brandon, her husband, thinks that it was planned, that this was a planned attack. It wasn't just some random thing. So you have to put some weight on that, I think. Hopefully one day we can say this was solved, because it's just, this is one of those things where it's weird because it's why? Why? What was the purpose, and why did this person dress the way they did and act the way they did and know the information they obviously knew? Because somebody who's not familiar with that space is not going to know where the cameras are, or that they're motion sensors, or that, hey, if I stay in this exact spot where she's coming to me, I know the cameras aren't going to catch any of this.
And if it wasn't planned, if this truly was just a random attack, whoever that person was needs to go out and buy a lottery ticket, because they got lucky as all hell. And I use lucky in the, loosest, worst possible way because of what exactly we're talking about. But it's just, there's so many factors in that it's just unbelievable if it was a random attack.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what everybody else thinks about this. And we want to give a heartfelt thank you to Haley Gray for her work researching this case. She truly is the best. So be sure to give her a follow at Haley Gray Research on Instagram. And while you're over there, go ahead and give us a follow at Weird True Crime. Don't forget, we're always open to requests, so hit us up in DMs through the contact form on the website at weirdtruecrime.com or emailing us at weirdtruecrime@gmail.com. Until next time, stay safe
And make good choices.
Bye.